Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. I'm really excited to be here. I'm Siddharth, even though the little label under my name says neuro. And I'm a neuroscientist, and I'm really grateful for Llewellyn for inviting me to be on this session. And thank you, everyone, for joining me here on this forum. And I've been attending a few of the talks, and it's been really nice to see all the questions. Today, I really want to first give a little bit of introduction to myself. So I started off as a computer scientist, but then I saw the light, and I moved into neuroscience. I work a lot with snail brains and how the environment affects their behaviors. And then I worked on fish brains and also hybrid devices. At some point, I started collaborating with artists and went into the world of art science. And then recently, I've also forayed into the world of neuroethics to talk about brain privacy and what happens to your brain scans. But about 5, 6 years ago, I started really exploring the art of mysticism and how our brain and consciousness evolves, and trying to understand how esoteric practices and spiritual practices are codified in our neural system. And that's kind of the gist of what all of this is about. And some of my work has now been research has kind of come together into a book, which is going to come out in the fall of 2024 from Llewellyn, called The Neuroscience of Tarot. The idea being that I've been reading tarot for 20 years and already been wondering, like, what's going on in my head when all this is happening. So when you look at an image of a tarot card, how do we move from that perception to creating mental images in our heads? And then from there, how do we make those intuitive leaps of faith to make actual gain insight from these cards, and then adding emotional balances to them. And then finally, when you have a querent in front of you, how does the social cognition work? How do we approach someone and ask a question and get answers about it? And then finally, we in the book also talks about neuroforecasting, which is a really new field, which is very exciting. I also designed my own deck of cards called the Neuro Tarot cards, which have been inspired by the major arcana of the tarot, but infused with neuroscience concepts. So the talk today is kind of based on one of the chapters of my the book on how the brain-body connection is there in tarot and divination. Feel free to pop your questions in the chat window. I'm going to pause every once in a while and answer the questions of the chat. And of course, we'll also have a bulk of time towards the end to answer more of your questions as well. So why brain and body in divination? Like what are we really talking about? When we look at, say, a tarot spread or even an astrological chart spread, it's a lot of symbols and a lot of maybe planetary alignments or other kinds of images that are there in front of you. And a lot of us, when we are looking at these, are making up narratives, creating through storylines, attributing different metaphors to symbols. So some cards can invoke a feelings of happiness or sadness, and some planets can be assigned metaphors or meanings such as being malefics or benefics. Um, so a lot of this is just words and pictures that are evoking all these different ideas in us. But somewhere down the line, at some point, we need to make a leap of faith. We need to use our intuition to kind of put the narrative together to say, this is what the outcome is going to be, or this is where the choice is going to lead you. So where does that intuition come from? Where does that leap of faith come from? Is something that I've been exploring. And a lot of it has to do with some kind of a gut reaction, kind of a gut check that is allowing you to make that final leap. And when we talk about those gut checks, even though I use the word gut check, it actually is physical changes in your body that your brain then interprets as um, a particular kind of emotion. So if I make this choice, that's going to lead me down a path of leading me towards a resolution. If I make that choice, it's going to give me more of obstacles. So your brain is actually interpreting bodily signals that is then allowing you to make decisions or culminating choices one way or the other. So, a question for you all out there in the chat world is, do you use kind of your body, or do you have certain feelings in front of you when you're going through this divination or intuitive process? Do any of you have experience in understand, oh, I have a release in my shoulders when I interpret something this way or that way? Um, Penny P says they use head, heart, and gut always. That's really great. For me, a lot of times when I'm making decisions, not just in divination, I kind of say, if am I getting a sinking feeling in my stomach, and if I get that sinking feeling, I'm like, I'm not going to, like, approach that particular decision. I'm like, okay, that's not for me. Elder Ravenkel says yes, sometimes that they do use some parts of their body for. So let's look at, where do these feelings come from? Where are these bodily reactions coming from? So we've all heard of our senses, such as the eyes, your sight, your smell, your taste, your feeling of touch. So we have the five external senses that is called exteroception, that's constantly going in your sensory system. Aside from that, we also have another sense of sensation called proprioception. That's going to give you an idea of where is your body in space. So if my hand is up here, I don't have to constantly see that my hand is up here. There are actually sensors in my tendons and my muscles that are telling me that where my different parts of my body are in space. So that's called proprioception. But there's also another set of sensors there all throughout your body, in your gut, in your heart, in your throat, in different, in your eyes, which are like constantly giving sensors to your sensory information within the internal structures to your brain. And this is called as interoception. And interoception is information is constantly being collected from within you, and your brain is interpreting it as one kind of emotion or the other. And these kinds of signals can be physical, can be mechanical. So when your heart is beating faster or slower, so that kind of mechanical change in the heartbeat is a mechanical thing. It can be chemical, hormonal, or even pressure information that's being passed on to the brain. And it looks like different people have different sensitivities to this. So I might be more attuned to my gut, whereas someone else might be more attuned to their heart. And but you can become more bodily aware. So if I ask right now to some of you, how fast is your heart beating? Some of you might actually be able to say down to how many beats per minute it's actually beating, whereas other people might not be able to say it. But if you slowly train yourself to become aware of that particular organ, you can actually become better and better at understanding your heart in some ways and becoming more interoceptively clear. The question is then, how is the brain taking all that internal information and then processing that to be one kind of emotion or the other? So this is where it happens. So we get information from the outside, and that's going to go down right in the center of the brain, the orange region down there called the amygdala, which is your emotion processing center. And from there, it's then going to get sent to your the red regions, which is where your memories are stored. So when you encounter a situation, you're comparing it with past situations that you've had. Is, have I encountered this before? Did it make me feel afraid or not? Did it make me feel happy or not? So you're actually comparing notes. Or did my parents tell me that this is supposed to make me feel good or not? So you're constantly learning to understand how a new situation or a new visual is supposed to make you feel like. So if you see a frowning face, you might not immediately when you're born know what the frowning face is, but over time you recognize certain things. Of course, there are some innate recognitions that are there, but a lot of things we learn over time. And then from there, we move to the purple areas, which are the embodiment. So this is where the internal senses come in. And the main structure, maybe that's the main thing you need to leave away with tonight, is your insula, which is deep in your brain. And that's where a lot of your internal representation of your body is present. So a lot of people are now using the insula. They think it's the seat of the soul in your body, and that's where they're looking for when you're meditating and doing that activities. They're actually looking at the insular activation to see how much that is being activated or deactivated during those kinds of practices. So that is where you're then comparing your past memories to how your body is physically reacting at this particular point in time. So if I walk into a room and I see a spider, but I've kind of not really, even though I'm expected to be scared, but if that spider is pretty far away and I'm like, I'm chilling out, then that internal representation of, my body is currently chilled out. Even though I see a spider, I'm not going to be scared about it. So that's kind of giving you that comparison. And finally, all of that is going to come together in the front part of your brain, your frontal lobe, to then express, I feel happy, I feel scared, I feel unhappy, and so on. Someone is asking if it's okay to share this YouTube link. I'm like happy for you to share it. My whole ethos in life is to make brain understanding your brain. All of us have brains, and we all need to understand it. And I think it's really cool for us to share all this information. And I think, and especially like practices like this is really really cool, and we all need to work together to understand and process this as a group and not as individuals enclosed in university spaces or other spaces. So please share. So maybe at this point, we can kind of think about which part of the body do you react with the most. So some people might think their heart, some people might think their gut. Some of you might feel tingles in your hand when you are doing certain things that you're like, or some of you might feel coolness in your feet. So depending on how sensitive or desensitive you are, different parts of your body, maybe in the chat you can talk about what part of your body do you react with the most. One exercise you can also think about it is, if some of you do have cards laid out in front of you, or if you don't have cards laid out in front of you, just pick out 3 objects and put them in front of you, and just close your eyes for a second and think about which object you're gravitating towards. And why do you think, what in your body is pointing you towards, I want to pick that object or that particular card? And if you force yourself to pick a different card or a different object, where in your body do you feel that? Where in your body do you feel that? So you might feel like tension in your shoulders. Maybe you'll feel constriction in your neck. Some of you might feel this almost like a heaviness when you are forcing yourself to pick something different. And that is where your internal sensation is coming in. Your sense of interoception is coming in. So some people are saying that their lower belly and the crown of their head. So again, this is kind of mixing in with your chakras as well, right? And some of you are talking about the heart, the stomach, and the top of your head. That's great. Saida, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. They're talking about the guts. So your stomach can expand and contract, and you have sensors on that, and that is probably what you're feeling with that. And the jaw and the throat, your trachea has a lot of sensors associated with it. And that's kind of another constriction of your throat when you're feeling anxious, or lungs. So yeah, your lungs have these little sacs, which are where gas exchange happens. Those are called the alveoli. And those have little sensors that are constantly passing information about how constricted or relaxed your lungs are. So there's a statement like this: emotions emerge. So aside from intuition, we can also talk about emotions. Emotions emerge when people make situated meaning of physical changes in their own bodies. So you're actually using your body as a way for your brain to interpret how you're feeling, how you're emoting. And similarly, when you look at a card and say, this card makes me feel a particular way, that's because your brain is interpreting all the signals from the body for a particular emotion. And the other side of it is, not only are you emoting your own body, but if you have a querent in front of you, you're also looking at them and looking at their bodily, you're looking at the actions and their body, and then saying, oh, they are feeling anxious or they are feeling sad, and so on. So you're actually associating emotions with their physical attributes. So I picked this card. So maybe even if you don't use tarot, this might be a good card for you to look at, and maybe take a pause, a moment, and think about what it makes you feel. And feel free to share that on the chat. So this is the Ten of Swords, and for a long time, this particular card. So Taylor is talking about feeling heavy and defeated. Taylor, if you could kind of go more, why do you feel heavy? Is there something in your body that's making you feel heavy or defeated, or is it just these words that are cropping up in your head? Elder is talking about the stomach dropping. River is talking about release from mental nap time. That's great. Change gut punch. It's interesting. Makes me feel stiffness in my back. Very interesting. Heart's beating faster. Yeah, defeat. Jaw is getting tight and tingly. So I think a lot of us who are using this in regular practice might just jump immediately to the meaning and the metaphors, but it might be interesting for us to step back a little bit and think about how are we reacting to it in a bodily fashion. So think about it that way. I would say if you do this all the time, then you might it might stilt your practice, but it might be a good exercise for you to kind of hone on the side, just to kind of get into that more groove of tapping into your intuition constantly. This is great. I hear all these different experiences. Someone is talking about their shoulders dropping, heavy heart but emotional release. So it's almost like the dropping of the heart, and then almost the lightening that's causing that. So it's really nice. So this is kind of the pathway that's going on. So you're getting these, say, when you're looking at this card, that sensory information is coming in, and that's going into the top of your head, your cortex. And from there, it goes to the amygdala. That's that little blue spot right in the middle, your emotional centers. And from there, it goes to this orange bit over here called the hypothalamus and the pituitary. And that's what's triggering your whole body reactions. So the hypothalamus and pituitary is going to send information into your bloodstream to release hormones and immune responses. That might cause you to feel anger, aggression, happy, or a rush. And then you also the hypothalamus is also going to trigger your body reactions, which is going to be your facial expression. If something is going to make you frown in disgust, or like almost that immediate reaction, or a sigh, or feeling that the smile, that spontaneous smile that you get, all that spontaneous quick reactions in your body, which you don't have to think about, saying, I look at this card and then, oh, I need to smile now. You're not thinking about it. It happens almost this spontaneous way. And that's because of this somatic response that's happening from the hypothalamic control. And then the autonomic responses, like your pupils dilations, or your lungs expanding and your heart beating faster, all that is also happening from control from the hypothalamus. And so if I ask you all to close your eyes right now and imagine a light shining on your eye, then even though your eyes are closed, your pupils will constrict. So it's your physiological response. By just thinking about something, you're actually experiencing a physiological response to that particular thought. And similarly, when you look at a card, and even though you're not experiencing the Ten of Swords with the swords poking in, so that is creating a mental image in you that's causing you to have a physiological response to that particular thing. And that's because of the drive of the hypothalamus causing all these almost simultaneous whole body responses throughout you. This is a, I'm sorry, the slide is not as clear in its representation, but this is kind of, if I right now told you, you're all going to get a pop quiz on everything you've learned about the brain so far, how are you going to react, right? So some of you might have this, oh my God, my heart is dropping, my blood pressure is increasing, and I'm getting the stress response coming in. So that's all up here going on, and then your pupils might dilate. We're like, oh, maybe I'm wide-eyed, and you might also create like, oh, I don't want to do a pop quiz. So it's all this is happening where you're not only is your internal stuff changing, but you're having the somatic response, and all this is being evaluated by your brain as, oh, this is something negative. I don't like the frown. I don't like this, you know, uh, dropping of the heart and the increasing blood pressure. So this is negative emotion, and then you look at your past experiences and then say, oh, this means that I'm anxious. And then from there, you then move to that behavioral choice of, okay, what am I going to do now that I have a pop quiz? I'm going to either check out of here, don't check out, but I'm going to check out of here, or I'm going to, push through. So that's kind of the whole thing where your brain and your body are going to come together to then make your behavioral choice. So someone here is asking, Kiki is asking, how is the vagal nerve involved with this? So yeah, the vagal nerve is the main nerve that's sending information from your body back into your brain. And so like say the mechanical changes in your gut and those kinds of things. So the vagal nerve is the one that's taking information back from your body into your brain. And so that's kind of how is that body information going back is mainly through the vagal nerve. So what does all this mean for a reading? So just be aware that your body might actually affect the reading, and be aware of how your body is reacting when you're seeing certain cards, images, or people. You might have a bias towards a certain image, and so if you constantly notice your body reaction, you might then go back and say, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I'm just. Reacting by instinct, and if I look at it in a different way, I wouldn't react a certain way. You can also alter your emotional states by altering your body posture. So if all of you right now kind of hugged yourself close and kind of assumed a defensive position, that automatically increases your cortisol or your stress levels and decreases your testosterone or your activation levels. And whereas if you did a reading where you're like open and free and expanding yourself, then you might drop your cortisol levels and increase your testosterone levels. But actually, it might be better for you to assume a neutral position. They talk about grounding yourself before you do some of these readings. So assuming that neutral position might actually give you the most unbiased sense. And even taking a few minutes to kind of have those exercises before you do a reading of any kind might actually help you to kind of set your current emotional state so that you're not influencing the reading as much when you get into it. And similarly, when you observe your querent, you can then ask them also to kind of, do a quick body scan to say, where are you at now in your body? Are you having that tension in your thing? Ease that out. And then, yeah, you can also ask them, as granddaughter Crow is pointing out, how are you reacting how do you feel when you see this particular image? Like, where do you feel it in your bones almost, right? Where do you feel it in your body? And so that's something is something you can use in your practice as a way to move forward to become better at understanding your own intuitive practices. So I have answered a bunch of questions here, but I'm going to stop there and have you ask any other questions that you might have. And yeah. Yes, I think so. Barbara is asking if some muscle stretching or body stretching would be helpful. Yeah, there are actually a lot of theater exercises that you could think about. There's a chart actually, there are a lot of exercises in the book, but one of them is about these like a what's called as an affect grid. So you have a grid, and you kind of put yourself in feeling low to feeling high, feeling pleasant to unpleasant, and you kind of have put a check mark of where you feel at the moment. And then you can imagine yourself as being expansive or being closed off, and walk around the room a little bit, and then put a check mark as to where your current your current emotional or body state is at. And then use that as a way for you to kind of ground yourself in this current moment, is a way for you to think about it. um, Kiki says, makes absolute sense when having an off day reading would be a good to do a body scan. Yeah, I think the body scan is really important. The other really interesting exercise is there's been some studies about emotions, where you feel your emotions. So, like sadness or happiness or fear. Different people across cultures somehow seem to experience emotions in certain parts. So when you feel depressed, a lot of people say that they feel coolness or deactivation in their legs. They're almost like a complete deactivation. And there's actually in the book, you kind of have these charts where you can color where you feel activated and deactivated. And that's another scan that you can do before you go into a reading, just to know where you're at, so you're not allowing that to influence like how you're interpreting signals. Christina talks about my past religious trauma makes it difficult for me to read the RWS because of associations I carry with the symbols. My body reacts. Yeah, this is something that I've experienced with. I have old Italian deck, where if you look at the back of the pictures, there's a lot of babies being boiled, and all kinds of like really. Um, but then I kind of felt a power in the deck that I really wanted to use it, but the images were just so stark, and that I was conflicted about using it. It was just the initial reaction was so difficult for me to pass through, but then I could feel the power in the images itself. So I kind of then did a body check to see where it is. Am I like presetting myself? Even when I pick up the deck, am I setting myself up to be in a tensed mode, or am I getting it only after I open the card? So I'm kind of breaking it down into steps. Actually, sometimes helps me to remove some of the biases I have when I'm going into a reading. Uh, Keisha is asking, do you have your own oracle with some of this information? I feel like if you do not, it would not be very beneficial for yourself and others, even for a personal morning card pull. Um, I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about the oracle. Um, I I kind of tend to trust. Not I tended not to trust my body a lot because I was not very comfortable in it. But over time, I just have felt that just getting into the practice of just listening, doing a listening session within my own body every morning has helped me get a little bit more rooted about some of these concepts. So if you're thinking about the oracle as being the body, maybe that's what it is, but I'm not completely sure where the question is going at. Margot Gruen asked a very interesting question. Is there anything in the book about abnormal psychology, neurology, and tarot? Not really, but what I just told you about how your brain is interpreting your body signals. A lot of times they say that when your body is saying something and your brain is misinterpreting it, or your brain is expecting you to react a certain way, but your body doesn't, then that disconnect is what causes some issues. So it might cause like having confused realities, or not being in sync. So the brain body, if the brain is misinterpreting or doesn't understand why you're not acting a certain way when you're supposed to be doing the other thing, that's when you get into some abnormal psychology, is what people say. Um, Kelly Jo is asking, how does this affect neurodiverse and autistic people? This is really a lot of autistic people actually have issues with the external sensations of is something that they have uh, issues with, especially with the feeling of touch. So a lot of them, some of them might not want to be touched, but some of them do like to have that enclosed hugs. Again, the autistic range is so huge that you can't like pinpoint specific things, but that external sensations are, they are almost hypersensitive on some level, like loud noise, and when they walk into a crowded room. So a lot of the external stuff really gets to them. But I think they are way a little bit more attuned to their own internal dialogue and their own internal uh, sensors. But the problem is the communication of the internal to the external is kind of where that happens. And of course, we have the idea of the neurodiverse being also the synesthetes, right? People who not just experience the world, just they hear colors or see music and those kinds of things. And there is a integrator in your head. So when you perceive things, where you kind of layer the vision and the audition and all that one on top of the other, so that they're all coordinated in one global world, and sometimes there's a not a sync there. um, but I think in some ways that might be more powerful, because you're actually able to see from multiple perspectives. um, yeah, it'll be cool to hear someone who is neurodiverse like that to talk about some of these issues. Grace says, as someone who deals with a lot of anxiety, it's nice to see that a seated posture could be contributing to high cortisol. I'm not saying just sitting down, but if you're sitting down and you're like almost closing in on yourself, you could sit down and imagine yourself to be, expanded, or maybe you do need to assume a more expanded posture. So think about, um, I don't know how many of you seen those whirling dervishes. It was interesting to me that when you're whirling, there are three different ways in which you can put up your hands. There's one way in which, sorry, my screen here for my I'm gonna maybe stop sharing my screen, and maybe I can see my hands better. But one way in which you can expand your hands is kind of raising it up to get the power of the universe down from outside, down through your heart. And then this hand kind of goes down into the earth, almost like that. So you're kind of getting the energy up from here, and then it kind of goes down and then goes down there. And then there's another one where you lift both your hands up in the air and kind of get all that cosmic energy in, and it just floods through your entire body. And then there's another one where you kind of get all that energy in, and then you close yourself up and you're whirling, kind of holding it all in, right? So you could, as if you are sitting and experiencing anxiety or something, you could try these different ways of expanding your body to change the way the energy flow happens and your brain interprets it. Sorry, I went completely off track, but yeah. Um, all right. Courtney says it'll be a great study for next book. Okay, I'll get on it. But I do think that some of this needs to be written by people who are experiencing some of this. I think maybe almost like a narrative ethics kind of thing, where you get experiences from people in the community who can talk about it. But it'll be a great thing to kind of edit together, I think. Grace says she volunteers to be part of the study. This is great. Um, okay. Oh, Llewellyn says one last question. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, feel free to email me or contact me, and I'll be happy to answer any other questions you have.